Okay, Deb, anytime.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Deb Ruggiero. I'm the interim superintendent of the Lynn Public Schools. Thank you for taking your time out of your busy lives to be part of this visioning team. As you were notified, you're agreeing to be part of 3 meetings, 4 if you include the community meeting that will be kind of in between session 2 and session 3. But the 3 visioning meetings, we really would like your input on. This is an important endeavor for Lynn Public Schools, but more importantly for the parents of the children who will benefit from being part of this school community. So thank you so much. Your feedback, your ideas are very important, and I am thrilled to join this process with you.
Great, thanks, Deb, and good evening, everybody. My name is David Stephen. I'm with New Vista Design, and I'm the educational programmer that is going to be helping to facilitate these workshops. And I'll be telling you a little bit more about what we'll be doing and why. But since we have a relatively small group, maybe what we could do is go around and have people introduce themselves. I think I'll start with the design team, though, from Raymond Design, and just have them introduce themselves, and then we can go around the room, so to speak. And if everybody could just say their name and their role, their connection to the school. You may play multiple roles within the school or within the community. We'd love to hear that. So we'll start with you, Gene.
Sounds great. My name is Gene Raymond. I'm one of the many architects and planners and engineers that'll be working on the project. As a way of background, there's 2 other Steves from our office that are on the line tonight. I'll let them introduce themselves, but Steve Lamoth and myself were involved in programming and designing the Thurgood Marshall Middle School. You know, it's becoming kind of many years ago at this point, but we worked on a previous effort at Pickering, and we're absolutely thrilled to be back with what we expect will be a successful new school this time. So with that, I'll turn it over to Steve Lamoth.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me, I hope?
Yep.
Yeah, my name is Steve Lamoth, and I'll be the project architect for the Pickering School. I was also the project architect for the Thurgood Marshall project.
And Steve Watchorn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen Watchorn, Raymond Design Associates architect and project manager for the project. And David, there may be people waiting in the lobby. I just got a message from Tim.
I don't have anybody waiting in the waiting room, but we are missing quite a few people.
You know, David, there was Tim from left field had sent out an invite that I tried to get into the meeting, and it was a different invite than this one.
Different invite.
Yeah.
Okay, that might be what is happening if there's another invite floating around somehow.
So how about I will forward the one you just sent to the people at left field.
Yeah.
Would you mind sending it to either Deb or Molly or Kevin and having them distribute it to people that would be missing?
The link that I sent to everybody on this email chain.
Okay.
In here, I sent that email with the link. So I suppose that's how people got on. So Tim is on that, but maybe we could, you could just direct him to that email that I sent.
I just forwarded. Yep, I forwarded that to Tim. Who else is?
I'm sending it to Lynn Stapleton, Steve, but Deb or Molly or Kevin, there may be teachers or other people that are missing, and you might have to forward them this.
We should have about 23 people total. We've got about 15 now.
Okay.
Yeah, so but we can just continue. Hopefully people will, I get dinged when people are in the waiting room. I can see when people are there, so I'll keep an eye on that for sure. Okay. All right, so yes, those are our two OPMs, our owners project managers, and maybe some other people that are waiting to get in. With that, maybe I'll just call on people as I see them on my screen because that's probably easiest. So Molly, you're up. You're up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Molly Cohen. I'm the interim deputy superintendent and the principal of Thurgood Marshall. So I worked with this team. It's fabulous. I'm so excited to be part of this process because that process was a huge success. So I'm really excited to hear what ideas come through in the next 3 meetings that we have together. Thank you for being here.
Great. And Priscilla?
Hi, Peter Ches. I am a Spanish 7th and 8th grade teacher at Pickering Middle School.
Great. And April?
Hi, my name is April Reed. I am an employee at Lynn Public Schools, but also my child attends Linwood's Elementary School.
Oh, great. Great. And Kevin?
Sorry, I was just checking the email to see if everybody got it. My name is Kevin Rouse. I'm principal of Pickering Middle School. And this is the second and final time we'll go through this because we are going to get a new school built. So I am excited to see this taking place.
Good job.
That's great. And Lisa?
You know, there's a couple people that we had a different link, so there should be some more people
I'm not
joining.
sure where that came from, Tim, but sorry about that. So hopefully, yeah, we'll get those people in.
Okay.
Lisa, we're just going around introducing ourselves, Tim.
Perfect.
Hi, I'm Liza. I'm of 3 elementary students at Lincoln Thompson. I'm on the school council and the PTO board as well.
Thanks, Liza. Chris?
My name is Chris Green. I am usually a 6th grade reading teacher at Pickering Middle School, but this year I am a 7th grade special ed inclusion teacher.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And Jessica?
Hi, I'm Jessica Gerardo. I'm a special education teacher at Marshall Middle School. I also have 4 kids going to schools in the city of Lynn, all 4 different schools.
Okay, great. Thanks. Tim?
Hi, Tim Baker with the project management firm Left Field for the Pickering Middle School project.
And thanks, Tim. Flory?
Flory McCoy. I serve in the ZBA for the city of Lynn. I'm also on the Pickering committee as one of the members. I also have a kid in Lynn Public School. And I attended Pickering.
Oh.
I graduated from Pickering many years ago.
All right, great. Great. And Erica?
Hi, I'm Erica Richard. I am the secretary on the PTO at Linwoods and a parent of a 2nd grader at Linwoods.
Well, great. So that's everybody that I have on my screen so far. Anybody not have a chance to introduce themselves in case I missed anybody? Okay. So
Lynn is not coming after all tonight, just to let you know. She had a family emergency.
Oh, okay. Thanks for letting us know, Tim. All right. I'm going to share my screen. And okay, can everybody see that okay? Thumbs up? All right, great. So yeah, so thank you so much for joining us tonight. We realize that at the end of a long day, this is a big ask. This process is really important though. It's one in which your ideas and the priorities that we sort of discuss in both educationally and architecturally are going to really have a direct impact on the programming and the conceptual design of this new and or renovated building. And so again, we really appreciate it. It is a process that is sequential, so we hope you can make it to each meeting. We'll be putting together a lot of notes and checking back with you about them to make sure that we got it right. This is really about listening to you and about learning as much as possible as we can about Lynn Public Schools and the needs of Pickering Middle School in particular. And tonight we're going to do kind of an overview of sort of what the visioning process is about and some big picture ideas about 21st century teaching and learning and facilities. And we're also going to be doing some priority goal setting, architectural priorities, educational priorities, and community priorities. And then we're going to be doing some real thinking about what future ready teaching and learning means to you all in the context of your middle schools in Lynn and at Pickering, and sort of introducing a bunch of ideas, asking for your feedback. This is all going to be very interactive in terms of a program we're using called Mentimeter, which is going to allow you to log on and give us real-time feedback. And we are going to put all of these notes together, and again, we'll begin every successive workshop with a review of the notes from the time before, and it's part of an ongoing conversation. I see that we have a few folks that have just joined us, and I just want to give you a chance to say hello. Dina and Andrea, we had just done some quick introductions, and sorry if you had a different link than the one that just got you on, but do either of you want to say a quick hello and say sort of what your role is or within the Pickering community?
Yes, hi, I'm Dina Coffey. I'm one of the guidance counselors at Pickering Middle School. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dina.
Awesome.
And Andrea, are you there? Well, maybe she can't respond right now. We'll see later. So yeah, so this process is one that involves different stakeholders, and it's really, as I said, a lot about listening, but it's also about pushing your ideas forward about what's possible. And so just in terms of my background, I am a licensed architect, but I did a weird thing. I worked as an architect for 5 years, and then I left the field for 20 years and became a teacher. And so I worked as a high school teacher for 10 years and then an assistant principal, did a lot of work around curriculum development, particularly around project-based learning and STEM and STEAM. I helped to start a network of schools in California called High Tech High. It's a misnomer. There are 16 K-12 schools, and they're really project focused and very interesting. And that's when I started getting back into thinking about how the design of spaces supports different ways of kind of future forward teaching and learning. So that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. I've worked on over 70 MSBA projects doing this process, and it's always customized to the needs of the community. But we're always, trying to check in with your educational leadership team, get the lay of the land. We're calling this group the Educational Working Group because we're going to develop a little bit of expertise together and some common language about what's most important to you. We're also going to be doing a community forum, as Deb mentioned, on November 30th, and we'll be reviewing some of the highlights of the educational vision and design patterns that we've been prioritizing within this workshop and getting community feedback on that. And there also may be the opportunity for an after-school voluntary faculty kind of workshop where we do the same thing. And this all translates into kind of your ideas about key spaces and adjacencies. Now, you've got a certain enrollment projection. The MSBA spits out a list of all the rooms that you're going to have in your school and how much square feet they are. And that's the template we have to work with, but we can be really creative within that in terms of how we use that space and how we co-locate spaces to create smaller learning communities or support team teaching, and also to support what you see as your forward-thinking programming down the road. We want a building that's going to last you for decades to come. So this all connects to an ed plan that your district is going to be writing. So it's a lot about sort of creating that vision that will translate into a common language you can use to talk to your community about what you're doing and why, and just make sure that you're getting the best building possible. Now, we know that we're going to be building off of the design of the Thurgood Marshall School as a model school that your district has and community have expressed a lot of interest in. But we've also talked to your leadership about taking the best of that model, but also really kind of taking a deep dive into what the needs of Pickering are and what is, specifically, and also looking at that building and looking at lessons learned, and how we might want to tweak things or how it might look different in an expression for Pickering. So with the virtual vision, we're going to keep the workshops to 2 hours. We're going to be doing breakout groups in every the last 40 minutes of every workshop you'll be in small groups having discussions so people can have their voices heard. Those groups will be facilitated loosely by our design team, and they're going to be taking notes. And again, we're going to be collecting a lot of information from you during this using interactive software. If you have questions, you could put them in the chat. It's a little bit hard for me when I'm in the midst of facilitating to see them, but I'll see them a little bit later and I'll try and address them. This is a small enough group that if you want to just if you have a question, you can turn off your mic and ask a question. Okay, so we don't have to be too formal in that way. But I do have a bunch of activities that I want to lead you through, and I'm going to definitely get you out by 8 o'clock. So we're going to be using Mentimeter. We can do a bunch of neat things with it in terms of how we look at visually what people are thinking. We're going to be developing a narrative that helps us optimize the MSBA template. And we are going to look at Thurgood Marshall as a model school, but we're also going to be looking at the specific needs of Pickering. Hold on one sec. Okay, so we got to introduce ourselves. So we've got administrators, teachers, parents, community members. Are there any school committee members here? Did someone? I don't think so. And school building committee. Flory, did you say you were on the school building committee, right?
Yes, I serve from both the ZBA and the committee, the building committee.
Okay, great. So let's just start with this. And let's see, I thought I put an invite here in terms of how to get you on here. Okay, what you need to do, we're going to go to menti.com. If you open up another browser on your computer and go to menti.com and then punch in this code, then you should get to this page. And when you do, you'll see a heart at the top of the page, I think. Oh, maybe you know. No, because this is not an introductory page. You'll get to this page. So just give me a thumbs up when you do. How are people doing? Okay. All right. So I'll let people, we'll give people a chance, we'll leave this up for a few minutes. So if it takes you a minute or two to get on there, no problem. So this is just going to be a little way to start out, kind of a word splash. What 3 words best describe the culture of teaching and learning? And sorry for the typo there, at Pickering Middle School. And you can submit these as 3 separate words. And we're going to see a word splash come up. And the way that these work, as you know, is the more often something is submitted, the larger it becomes. So if you are watching this develop and you want to reiterate something that you think like, yeah, that's a good word, you can do that too.
One thing I was curious about was who is NVD? And now I realize it's David. His company is New Vista Design.
Yes, that is NVD.
So
yes.
David, I assume this is something you don't want, like RDA in my answers, right? You're muted, David. David, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. Did anyone have any trouble getting on? Just want to make sure. Okay. So collaborative right out there, front and center. And that's certainly something that we want to think about what that means in terms of the building, right? How do we help you collaborate in the ways that are going to be most organic and supportive? How do we help you create a nurturing, engaging environment? And passionate, like a school where kids are passionate, teachers are passionate, we can celebrate the learning that's going on there. So, all right, well, I'm going to move on from this and we're going to start talking about your priorities for a new or renovated Pickering Middle School. And just to clarify that through the Mass School Building Authority process of this feasibility study, we have to look at a renovated Pickering school, a renovation with an addition, or a completely new school. And what we're doing is we're looking at big picture, kind of like the 10,000 foot view of what your priorities are educationally and architecturally. So we can use those as lenses through which to look at all those different alternatives. And of course, we're going to look at the cost that's associated with them and what it gets you. But what I did want to say before I ask you to tell me what your priorities are, I want to encourage people to be really aspirational, because it's very easy when you're working in an old building, and I know this because I did work in an old building for a long time, to just focus on things like the heat that doesn't work, or that not having AC, or windows that don't open, or not enough bathrooms, things that are really low hanging fruit. What I want to do is encourage you to think much more aspirationally about what your ideal building would look like, because this is the time to be aspirational. And so what I can tell you is that any renovation that's done through this process is going to be like a gut renovation: new walls, new systems, new windows. It's as if you renovated an old home and did a gut renovation. So any new or renovated school is going to be fully ADA compliant. We're going to be thinking about safe entry and security features. It will have heating and cooling. It's going to be used throughout the year, 365, 24/7. It's going to have modern technology and furniture that goes along with it. It'll have well-sized classrooms. We know that classrooms need to be larger than we used to make them, and they all need to have natural light. It's not like the 70s where we thought that, kids get distracted when there's a window. No, we know that both teachers and students perform much better when there's natural light. Also, we're going to be thinking about indoor-outdoor connectivity and really maximizing the use of your site. Push in special education for those people that aren't educators. That means that special education services, which used to happen at one end of the school, now push in means that they happen in the general ed classroom or in very close proximity, so that they happen sometimes in the same classroom. You'll have multiple adults working with smaller groups of students in a classroom. And the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is going to make sure that we're designing a school that's going to facilitate that by putting breakout rooms and small group rooms sprinkled throughout the school. Now, there may be a sub-separate room that's in where certain services happen, or a sub-separate program that's in a different part of the building that needs more privacy, but that's different. So safe drop off and pickup, we're going to be thinking about that, separating bus and parking and vehicular traffic, thinking about bikeability and walkability. We have to design a sustainable building. It'll either be LEED certified or mass chips. So we're going to be looking at active and passive measures. And there will be an adequate number of distributed bathrooms and gender neutral bathrooms. So these are all things that any new or renovated building is going to have. That doesn't mean you can't share them as priorities that you'd really love to see, but just know that they're kind of givens. So you can think about aspirationally what you would love to see. Some of the themes that come up when we're designing what we call 21st century school buildings is we can now use every square inch of the building, right? Because it's all going to be wired. the technology infrastructure will be really robust. So that means what used to be the hallways could potentially be extended learning areas that are fully wired where you can use technology, right? Now, and especially if we're in an environment, in a middle school environment where we're trying to promote kids being more kind of independent learners and developing more agency and independence and confidence, we want to give them opportunities to be working in small groups and individually. We want to create flexible and multi-use spaces, and any big ticket items like our cafeteria, our gym, and our library are going to be multi-use spaces that fulfill a lot of different functions. We want to think about extending learning beyond the classroom walls, both literally and figuratively, beyond the school as well. We're thinking about bringing community partners in safely and bringing kids out into the community as learning opportunities. And we want to build synergy and connectivity between different kinds of spaces. So classrooms, breakout rooms, meeting rooms, presentation areas, gathering spaces, and have those spaces work together so that they're really kind of like synergistic. And finally, we want to think about defining learning clusters for smaller communities, especially as a school gets larger, and especially in a middle school environment. You want to create small learning communities where kids and teachers can really get to know each other well, where kids are not going to fall through the cracks, and where they feel a sense of identity and connection. So we'll be talking to you about what that looks like ideally for you. So this is your opportunity to be really aspirational in this process. Lots of compromises get made, and because every square foot costs money, and we've got to be really conscious of that. We're not talking about putting in a lot of bells and whistles or making a really fancy building in that way. We want to think about what's going to be, flexible, adaptable, and really practical, but get you your best building and your most dynamic building possible. But and oftentimes aspirational ideas don't have to be expensive. There are certain ways that we can do them. So with that all said, I'm going to open up for you to go to menti.com again, and maybe you're still on it. And I have 3 different prompts. The first one is about your future forward educational priorities for Pickering. The second one is going to be your architectural priorities. And the third one is going to be your community priorities. And I want to specifically say that in educational priorities, it's very often that people go directly to the spaces that support the kind of programming you want to have. Like you'll talk about collaborative spaces as opposed to collaborative education or collaboration. So what I want you to really think about is the programs, the educational programs that you really value now at Pickering or in the future, and what your educational goals are. It's okay if it connects to space, but there'll be a lot of time to talk about space. All right, so I should say also that these are all anonymous and that we don't know who's sending what, but it's nice that we can see it. And if anybody at any point wants to kind of reiterate something that they said or explain it a little bit, feel free to turn off your mic and do that, or turn off your mute. And when I say future forward, it's just a way of saying really just future oriented, thinking that this building, if it's going to last for 50 years, think about how much has changed just in the last 20 years in terms of technology and kind of teaching and learning strategies. Yeah, thinking about what your future vision is for where you would like the school to go and how it could be most flexible. Okay, so I'm gonna start talking a little bit about what I'm seeing as you guys are continuing to submit your responses. So workforce and career connections to learning and 21st century skills. And we're going to be talking a bunch about that. That's definitely something that lots of communities are thinking about, how to get more kind of career oriented and hands-on in ways that are engaging for kids. And that connects to the idea of 21st century skills. High interest elective choices and a smart lab. Is a smart lab, can I just ask, is that like a makerspace or a, could someone share what that is, a smart lab? Maybe, is that a program that you have? Anyone on smart lab? Okay, well, we'll explore that as we go along. Lots of schools are, thinking about, we don't do computer labs so much, but we do maybe 3D modeling labs or robotics labs or maker spaces. And that is definitely part of the MSBA template. So here we have STEAM classes. So that is maybe connected to the smart lab. So STEAM, again, for our non-educators, because we have a bunch of parents with us, is science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So it's an interdisciplinary approach to that content that tends to be kind of project oriented and hands-on and maker spaces. Capacity to support changing technologies and curricula so that students are prepared for high school and beyond the 21st and 22nd century. Okay. Wellness, prioritizing mental well-being, life skills, technology safety, peer support, anti-bullying, fostering collaboration, teamwork, workplace skills. And we can do a lot in terms of making a building having the building foster these kind of like the development of community and connection within the building. And that's a big difference in how we're designing schools these days and how we're thinking about them. It would be nice to have different shops for students. So cooking, sewing, to offer them other electives, so more hands-on stuff. Strong leadership, continuous improvement in curriculum and capacity to support every changing technology. The space to hold existing and future student population. And so Marshall is great, but it's extremely overcrowded. So we need to really think about that capacity. Programming that aligns with 21st century jobs, space for future technology, introduction to vocational things. Yeah, so we've got a bunch around that vocational career orientation. Focus on the future of vocational schools, on expanding trades and vocational schooling, and SEL spaces that encourage healthy living practices such as yoga. So SEL is social emotional learning. So that connected to a student's experience of being part of a community, also learning how to kind of understand their own kind of needs and moderate their behavior and understand how to have good relationships with people around them. So lots of schools are focused on that. All right, great. So just to say that when we talk to your leadership about their educational priorities, some of the things that were at the top of their list were inclusion and access. So seeing all students as intellectual scholars and giving access to rigorous educational programs for all students, including students with disabilities and multilingual learners. Another was exposure to career pathways, and those paths would be identified and pursued through all the grades, connecting to career and workforce, and then support for cross-discipline teaching teams, cross-discipline grade level teams. And that's certainly something that small learning communities can help to support, and professional learning communities, what we call PLCs, that are more subject area and content based. So now I'm going to ask what your top future forward architectural priorities would be for the new or renovated school. So what are the architectural features or approaches or qualities that you would like to see in a new Pickering? Okay, so library, and I remember I visited Thurgood Marshall a few years ago, but I remember there was quite a nice library there and a lot of beautiful natural light and kind of centrally located next to an outdoor space. And we definitely look at libraries as hubs of school community and areas where not just books are, but where collaboration happens. So there might be sort of more active zone, more quiet zone, might be connected to a maker space or a STEAM space. Visual connection to our many cultures. So, whoops, sorry about that. So making reference to the diversity and cultural diversity that you have, being accessible for all students. And that kind of connects to the idea of universal design for learning, which goes beyond ADA compliance and handicapped accessibility to really make the building easy to use, easy to navigate and understand. And we'll talk about how that happens. Different spaces for lunches inside and outside. And this is a theme that's coming up a lot, kind of distributed dining, where you have smaller venues for kids that are, where a big noisy cafeteria feels intimidating to them. So thinking about those smaller venues. Spaces that allow for flexible and adaptable pivots for future endeavors that we haven't anticipated yet. For sure, we want to make things, that's kind of scenario planning in that, certain walls, if they, we keep the structural grid very simple so that if walls need to be moved, we can do that, among other things. Clustering spaces for groups of classes, meeting areas for teachers to meet and plan. So that idea of classroom neighborhoods we'll talk about. Space above is a priority above all, just making sure you have enough space and the right kinds of space. Education and inspirational connections with the physical space. It would be great to be inspired by mathematical patterns in the tile work or inspirational sayings throughout the school. If you have core values or oftentimes there are themes kind of like that have to do with the history of the community that we can talk to you about. Connections to outside learning. We definitely think about the walls being permeable in the sense that, we want kids to be able to interact with the school beyond the school walls in safe ways, the community beyond the school walls. And we want community members from the outside community to be able to come in, serve as mentors and leverage sort of the talent that you have in the community. Visually stimulating, artistic, physically spacious areas fostering collaboration, advanced technology, and smart and green and eco-conscious. Lots of good stuff. Yeah, and in terms of the visual stimulation, we'll show you different examples. Part of a universal design approach is to sometimes see the school itself as kind of like a blank slate. There may be certain features using colors or materials or art projects or things like that create simulation, but also to leave it as so that it can be also it serves as kind of like a blank slate for teachers and students to kind of make their own. So we'll show you examples of that as well. A minimum LEED Gold rating. Possible room for expansion, knowing that you always are expanding in terms of your student body, or possibly an enclosed bike shelter for fostering bikeability. Outdoor classrooms and learning opportunities. Areas to display community and student work, for sure. We'll talk about multiple venues for exhibition, garden, outdoor or indoor, conversation or discussion space for students outside the classroom, okay? Meeting rooms for special ed and for social workers and guidance to meet with students. So those need to be a little bit more private. Zoom-ready classrooms and space for the whole community to get together. All right, lots of good stuff. I got one more, and then we'll take a quick break. I'll just tell you, though, that your architectural priorities, when we talked to your leadership team, or these are some of the highlights of them. So inspiration and aspiration, like really an inspiring building, a place where you want to be, where students want to be, where teachers want to be, where it feels like home. The creation of small learning communities with commons areas, those places for gathering, outdoor learning, a library and STEAM space, spaces for clinical staff, the feel of a secondary school. So, you know, kids feel like, wow, we're being treated like older students. Robust technology and borrowing the best of Thurgood Marshall, but not just repeating it. So those were the highlights from when we talked to your leadership team. And one more before we take a break, looking at your top future forward community priorities. So I've been using the word community, I guess, in two ways. There's your school community, right? Which is the community that you build of students and teachers, faculty within the building. And then there's the larger community. And this question is really more about the larger community. And we definitely are seeing schools these days as resources for the larger community, and thinking about safe ways to completely block off certain areas of the school and leave other areas for use potentially after hours on weekends, and maybe for rental, for revenue generation. So things like your cafetorium or your gym or your library, things like that. So just to say, how do you see this as a resource for the community, and what do you think your community's top priorities are? All right, so Family Resource Center, and we can talk about what that might look like. The school being welcoming and inviting. Helpful to have an adult learning classroom off the gym cafeteria for evening classes. So for adult learning, the school as home place, feels like home, feels safe, easy to access gym and cafeteria. And again, we're usually putting separate entries for after hour access to these spaces, or finding a way to make the main entry kind of a safe way to access that without the rest of the school. Community and Family Resource Center. Top priorities, learning and a space for our students. I think that a community priority should focus on after school and weekend help for our kids. Okay, great. A 21st century auditorium. Maybe the cafeteria could be an event space. And that is usually how we're seeing the cafeteria is as an event space and as a cafetorium with a full stage and lighting. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jean, or anyone from RDA, but the middle school template for the MSBA does not include an auditorium unless the community is willing to fund that themselves.
Correct. So what they typically will reimburse or fund is what we did at Thurgood Marshall, which is a very nice cafeteria with a very nice stage.
Yeah, so those cafetoriums are definitely not the cafetoriums that we potentially grew up with. They've got much better acoustics. They've got a full stage and lighting and sound. Oftentimes those stages have movable walls where you can then close off the stage and use it as a music room. And it's usually connected to the choral room that might be in back of it or nearby. So, but the MSBA sees auditoriums as expensive, hierarchical, and they're not used most of the time, so they sit empty. And that's when they think about a 21st century facility and the best use of funding, it's around creating that kind of more black box theater type space in your cafeteria. Let's see. Okay. Wellness resources, so more about resources for the community, after school clubs, social areas, dances, potlucks, etc. Well, and I would say wellness resources for your students and families, theater facilities. Pickering will be a resource for the community, use of building by sports teams, churches, community outreach, student enrichment groups, and after school programs, day and night care. And we'll be thinking about, how to support that after school programming. Vocational spaces in close proximity to each other in case they want to use it for community events or on the weekends, or for adult learning, and community room for picking and dropping off clothing and non-perishable items. So that might be connected to your family resource center. Okay, great. So your community priorities from your leadership were community use and access, community engagement with the school and in this process, a community health center, and providing community and family resources, resource center, after school and extracurricular programming. So lots of the same things. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing. And it is 6:52, so I'm going to ask, let's take an 8-minute break and come back at 7 or 7:02. I'll give you 10 minutes. We'll come back at 7:02, and then we're going to start talking about 21st century teaching and learning and what that means to you, what that looks like at Pickering, and then we'll get into some small groups and do an activity around that. All right, so we'll see you back here in 10. And I'm going to share my screen again.
Mm-hmm. Hey, David, just so you're aware, we did do a count and we're missing about 7 individuals that were originally supposed to be here.
I know, I have them on my list. And do you think that they would have all gotten emails from me today with this link? So I'm not
I will
sure
check
where
with the
that other link
teachers.
is.
I'll check with the teachers who aren't on to make sure that they got it and then resend it just to make sure they have the right link.
Yeah. And I'm really sorry about that if somehow there was a miscommunication. We can certainly make this available to them, this recording, and then ask for their feedback on these different categories and weave that into the notes. And we had talked about doing a teacher survey, I think, when originally. So that is another way that we can try and weave other voices in.
The link you'll be using for the next 2 sessions as well?
I'm sorry. Yes, this is the same link. We're going to use the same link for all sessions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. And I'm just getting my. All right. Sharing. Okay, so what I wanted to do was to talk about what future ready teaching and learning means to you all, what it looks like at Pickering both now and in kind of your aspirational future, what you would love to see. And we want to talk about the educational program before we get into talking about the building pieces. Next week, we're gonna jump into talking about design patterns and give you lots of different ideas about how we approach the creation of space in schools. But for today, we really want to focus the rest of the time on what future ready teaching and learning even means. What is 21st century skills? What do they mean to you all? So I can just say I have a few words of kind of like a few slides of introduction. Then I'll talk about what your district leadership said, and then we're going to go through some of those things and see what you think about them. So, definitely the 6 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, that have been around forever, and then rigor, relevance, and relationship that have been around since the 70s are all still really important in terms of what makes a school run and sort of why we do school. But in addition to that, the 5 C's is something that lots of schools are talking about. Critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity, and citizenship. And when a lot of people talk about 21st century skills, that's kind of what they're thinking about. They're thinking about these big buckets of kind of soft skills, higher order thinking skills that have a lot to do with not only learning information, but then doing something with that information. And so that means that the head and hand piece, and we've talked a bunch about vocational and career tech kind of programming, that project-based learning or career-focused programming, the application of content is something that a lot of schools are thinking about. And then that social emotional learning piece as well is something a lot of schools are thinking about. So we're looking at schools that are, all over the map, but certainly trying to be more student-centered, meaning not just around teacher experience, but around students being more independent learners, developing confidence in themselves. Interdisciplinary, even on the high school level, we see schools becoming more interdisciplinary because that's just the way that the world is interdisciplinary. So it helps kids to understand how things fit together. Certainly being fully inclusive and differentiated, universal design for learning on the educational front, which means making sure that we're making it accessible to kids. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Connecting to the community, problem and project-based learning, oftentimes for schools, that's around STEM or STEAM. And technology is just there when you need it, where you need it. And we're going to assume that every kid has a few devices within the next few years, right? So we look at, in general, sort of moving to a more student-centric, active, flexible kind of learning environment, technology available, collaborative and project-based. But we're still doing a lot of traditional and delivery. And that's part of it too. So we have to support both. And this isn't just a nice idea. This is sort of very connected to, this is from the Future Jobs Report from the World Economic Forum. And all these skills are basically the 5 C's, right? It's not about what you know, it's about being a good thinker, a good learner, a good problem solver, being adaptable, being able to work in groups. And so, it's something that a lot of schools are valuing. When we asked your leadership what was most important to them in terms of key programmatic focus areas, these were the things that came out on top, and I'm going to go through them now. I'm going to do, after the first 6, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to ask you what this looks like on the ground in your schools, either now or in an aspirational future. And then we'll go through the next 6. And then we'll see what's missing, because there's certainly going to be stuff missing. So right up at the top, and this is in order of the priority list that we just saw that your leadership team created. Social emotional learning is right up at the top, and that, as we said, is a lot about kids developing social emotional awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision making. I mean, this is incredibly important for middle school kids, as you know. This is really the focus, right? So how do we create an environment where, you know, mindfulness can be a focus, or where mental health can be a focus? So social emotional learning. Next was project-based and deeper learning. So problem-based learning that has to do with maybe things going on in the community or projects that feel real to kids. We know that's very engaging. What that also means is that you might be doing more performance assessment and product creation. So if you're doing more project-based learning, you need the materials and you need places to store them, and you need places to store the projects. But this project-based learning is connected with what some people call deeper learning, because it allows kids to go really deeply into some things. They're not just learning from, you know, from a pacing chart, the things that we know that we want them to learn. They're also having opportunities to go deeper at times. And then universal design for learning. Whoops. We talked about it on the architectural level. On the educational level, what it means is that using varied delivery methods, so teaching the same content but in different ways, giving kids opportunities to represent and express what they know and can do in different ways. That doesn't mean we still don't give exams, but there are also other ways for them to express that, and there are other ways to engage with the information. So that's very much connected to differentiated instruction and meeting kids where they're at. We know kids have lots of different learning styles, just as we do. So we want to be able to meet them where they're at and sort of get them inspired and feeling more confident in learners as learners. Mastery core academics was next on the list, and that's certainly sort of the overarching thing that we're all concerned about: basic, you know, literacy and numeracy. But even there, if you look at the mass core, you know, the state standards, there's a big emphasis on all those 5 C's, on kids actually doing more critical thinking and reading and writing more across the curriculum, and using evidence from text, and thinking sort of in terms of conceptual understanding of mathematics. And so these things are baked into even the standardized exams that kids are taking these days. We're asking kids to sort of like practice those 5 C's, those 21st century skills, in the context of this mastery of core academics. Real world connections, community engagement, connecting kids to the adult world. This may be internships or service learning, field studies, job shadows, leveraging the resources of the community and your community partners that help you, you know, to sort of inspire your kids, and making the school walls permeable in safe ways. And then blended and virtual learning. So thinking about kind of seamless technology integration. So this may connect to the flipped classroom. We learned a lot about this in the hard way over the last few years with the pandemic, right? But we also saw some of the benefits, especially for some kids. So again, this fits into like universal design for learning. So thinking about how technology is available, how it's used. I also think that it's really important to think about kids producing using technology, not just consuming. So they're not just consuming technology, but they're making video games, or they're 3D printing. They're doing really complex stuff that they couldn't otherwise do without technology, that feels really motivating to kids when they can produce stuff that looks really professional. Here's a list of the things that I just sort of went over. And I'm wondering if you could reflect on what these look like now at Pickering Middle School. What are the programs or the things that are happening at Pickering Middle School now that connect to these priorities? And you can, and I think I'm going to ask you to say either specify now, this is what it looks like, or in the future, I would, something that you imagine or that you aspire to for the future with regard to these. I'm going to leave these up for now, and then we can scroll over and see what people are saying, but I'll leave this up so you can kind of refer to them. You don't have to respond to all of them, but it's just helpful to know what these look like on the ground, and what you would like them to look like in the future. Okay, I'm going to scroll over and see what people are saying. So now classrooms are too small for a lot of UDL practices, like different seating arrangements. And that's one of the biggest ones, right? Is having modular furniture so you can move it around and set it up in different ways. Use of modern classroom project for blended learning with a focus on mastery. So the modern classroom project, okay. Teachers working in content collaborations is a core feature of the master schedule. Okay, so content groupings, teacher teams planning together. Okay, and now standards-based instruction, UDL, mastery of core academics, professional learning communities in the future. More social emotional learning, real world connections, flexible spacing, and real world outcomes. Okay. Laboratories, office spaces, open concepts, storefronts, amphitheaters, outdoor marketplaces. Okay, so I'm going to assume that that's kind of a future forward sort of look. All right. I don't want to cut anyone off if they're in the mid. Oh, here we got one more. Okay. Love to have a student support wing with guidance, social workers, and clinicians and school nurse, as well as a teen health center, to have a really coordinated support center to address the emotional needs of students. Okay. Aspirational. Space and resources for UDL implementation, working labs, money and other resources to make them really work for the labs, because it's one thing to have the labs, but the materials and the kits are really important. Absolutely a focus away from over-consuming technologies and helping kids to produce technology. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Great. It looks like maybe we're ready to move on. So I'm going to go do 6 more, and then we'll ask for your feedback on that, and then we'll get into our small groups. So STEM and STEAM, we've talked about that. STEM is kind of like a meta discipline. It's not like any necessarily new content in and of itself, but it's the way that each of these disciplines connect together. I definitely think that the A in STEAM is meant to include humanities. It's not just the arts, it's the humanities as well. And when you think about really good STEAM programs and STEAM projects, they always have a heavy dose of the humanities because it's a lot about communicating your ideas. You're doing the full spectrum of a project that connects to these disciplines, and you need your language skills to be able to communicate what you're doing and what you're finding. And it also very much connects to the design thinking process. So definitely there are maker spaces that are within the MSBA template. It's called an STE lab, a science, technology, engineering lab. But each school has their own flavor of programs that they want to support. And many schools don't have those programs yet, but they want the spaces to be able to create them. And professional learning communities. So it sounds like your teachers are, there's definitely sort of subject level kind of connectivity. What I think is going to be really important for our architects to understand is, if you're doing more cross-discipline grade level neighborhoods, how they might facilitate that and how your teachers can connect both cross-discipline and discipline specific. So, but those professional learning communities, oftentimes involve cohort groupings of students as in grade levels, for instance, and that kind of academic and vocational integration or integration of kind of more hands-on and academic work. Growth mindset came up on the list, and that's sort of the working with kids to understand the value of effort over innate intelligence. It's not just like I'm good at math or I'm good at art or sports, and so I'm going to do them, and I'm not going to do them if I'm not good at them. It's understanding that if we work hard, if we persevere, then we're going to get much better, and that's how we can discover our strengths and new strengths. And differentiated instruction, so targeted intervention, personalized learning, self-paced and small group work, inclusive and equitable access. This, by the way, is a high school in California, the Da Vinci High School, but they have middle schools as well that look a lot like office environments. Talk about feeling like a secondary school environment for kids. They have these extended learning spaces with views in and out of their classrooms where small group work can happen and group gathering can happen as well. Student-centered and lifelong learning. So the idea is students developing confidence and agency and developing all those higher order thinking skills, being proactive learners, learning to be problem solvers, organize themselves. And I just added this as just in general in middle school considerations. What we think about a lot is interdisciplinary teaming, supporting advisory programs if you have them, varied instruction, so including academic but also more hands-on, exploratory programs where kids get to explore kind of different interests, and also transition programs. Like many middle schools are thinking that their sixth grade is really different than their 7th and 8th grade in terms of the population and their needs, their developmental needs. And so they define sort of zones within the school, not that those kids don't interact, but there might be a transition program in the earlier years. So, or in the later years, in the 9th grade, it could be a transition program to go to high school. So, thinking about these things that I just mentioned, if you could let us know what it looks like now and what it might look like in the future in your mind's eye. Okay, I'm going to scroll over and see what people are saying. In the future, spaces that encourage students to take ownership of their learning by being their own architects of projects in spaces that are professional and inspiring. That is thrilling. Yeah, you know, one of the things that is, as we think about every square inch of the school being used and expanding learning beyond just the classroom, that is a real culture change for schools, because we're used to wanting to keep our students really close at hand, and definitely they do need to be monitored. But if we create either small breakout rooms or extended learning areas that are immediately adjacent to classrooms with some visibility, then that's a way to help them take the smaller steps to build some of that agency. Obviously, you wouldn't do that if a student, you know, you didn't think it was, you know, going to be workable for them. So, but that's how you create a different culture. Future self-paced student-led learning, more student-driven learning, areas for small group learning and collaboration. Now, a large focus on blended learning and the modern classroom project. Can I ask someone to just give me a 1 minute kind of what is the modern classroom project? Because I think that sounds like it's important for us to know.
I'll jump in.
Okay, Deb, thanks.
So when we were remote, we were doing PD that year that had a piece around blended learning. We were trying to help each other understand the best way to teach remotely.
Yeah.
And part of that professional development, there was a modern classroom video. It's a company, but it's all about blended learning.
Yeah.
And students being self-paced in their learning and tracking kind of where they are, having videos of
Right.
instruction that students could revisit.
Yeah.
You know, if they, you know, didn't remember what was instructed and needed
Right.
to go back and review it. Mastery checks throughout the process. So students are always, you know, seeing where they're at and whether they're ready to move on.
Yeah.
And so we have partnered with Modern Classroom, and we have a number of teachers who have participated in the mentoring, the PD and the mentoring training of that company. But it's
That's
really linked to blended learning and students.
Great. Thanks for that. Yeah, so it sounds like your teachers are becoming more comfortable with that and trying to figure out, you know, how to really leverage that to help kids work in more self-paced ways, which is certainly one of the benefits of technology. So access to blended and virtual learning should be important, considering LPS has such a large and ballooning student population. Students aware of their progress and growth as part of the goal setting. In the future, differentiated instruction having multiple spaces within the classroom so that students may work in stations or work with other students, not just having the traditional classroom spaces. Yeah, we definitely think of classrooms more and more like kindergarten classrooms in that they're station-based, that there may be direct instruction where everybody is facing towards a teaching wall, but a lot of the time there's going to be small group things going on, and they could be different things. Depending on the classroom and the needs. Having more community events at the school to enhance the homeschool connections and build better relationships with parents and community stakeholders. And in the future, incorporating more STEM and STEAM to help with future success and encourage more exposure to different concepts and skills, as well as student-centered learning, beneficial for students who need different thoughts, examples to learn, and physically, like a modern high-tech space with a community feel, spaces that students can change to conform to their needs, and like the sliding doors that double as whiteboards and can foster privacy when needed. Okay, great. All right, one more question here, which is just to rank these in order of importance. Just, you know, I know it's a big ask, but in order of importance for you as you think about the needs of Pickering students. And you don't have to do all of them. You could do maybe your top 6 or 7. Just always interesting to see what floats to the top here and if that reflects sort of the general kind of understanding of the school's priorities. So real world connections is trending up towards the top, along with student-centered learning, mastery of core academics and STEM and STEAM, blended and virtual learning, and project-based. So again, it doesn't mean that any of the, it's not to say that the other things aren't important, but let's see. Anyone else need a little more time before I move on? Okay, there we go. All right. I'm aware of time and wanting to get into our small groups where we've got to have a lot of really good conversations. But just real quickly, then last question before we get into small groups. Anything missing from this list that's important to you when you think about the focus areas at Pickering? Just gonna scroll over here. Trauma-informed teaching. Okay. Yeah. And actually, interestingly and not surprisingly, trauma-informed design is something that we're thinking a lot about these days. So that means bringing in natural textures and wood and natural light, having different kinds of areas where kids can feel comfortable, that universal design kind of sense of really being part of a community and knowing how to navigate your way around it, having it feel non-institutional. A lot of that biophilia, bringing in green into the school, and global awareness in foreign studies. Okay, there may be more that people are thinking of, and I know I'm asking you to do this quickly, but I'm looking at the time and I want to give us at least 25 minutes in our groups, our small groups. So your task, you should have gotten in your email this Learning Goals handout, which is a 2-pager, it's a PDF. But if you didn't get it, please go to the chat. And in the chat, I've placed this document. Once you get into your small groups, I'm going to come and visit you and I can give it to you then if you need it, but it's much easier if you have it on hand before you get placed in your small groups. So everybody have that? Is there anyone that doesn't have that handout? So if you go to the chat, it's there, or if you go to the email that I sent earlier, it's there as a PDF. So what this is basically 15 different versions of profile of a graduate or what are important 21st skills. What we want to do is end up in your small groups, and you only have a little bit less than 25 minutes to look at these lists really quickly. There's a lot of overlap, and think about the things that you think are most important for Pickering students, for middle school students. If we were going to have a poster in every Pickering classroom, what might anywhere from 6 to 8 learning goals be, and you're going to see, again, some of these you're going to like more than others, or you like the language of it, or you think, oh, that connects to what we do at Pickering. You can borrow anything from here, but you can also just make up your own. You can mix and match. All right. So with that, I'm going to, you're going to get an invitation now, and you're going to be with either Jean or you're going to be with Steve or Steve. And they're going to help guide you through this conversation and take notes. Tim, I wasn't sure if you wanted to be in a group.
Yeah, I'd like to sit in one of them.
You want to go to one?
Yeah, just
Okay,
choose.
we'll give you an invite. Put Tim in a group. I should have pointed out your background, Tim, talking about biophilia. All right. Flory, I'm not sure if you're with us still. All right, well, maybe Flory is. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I think it's everybody. And sorry if you got cut off. Let me just ask, did people hear my voice say there's 5 more minutes? Did you hear that broadcast? That's the first time I tried that. You didn't hear that?
I heard.
No? Okay, but Chris, you heard it. Interesting, because there's this feature in Zoom where you can broadcast to the breakout rooms, but anybody else hear it? Just Chris? Are you hearing things, Chris, maybe?
I heard it.
All right, all right. So it's 8 o'clock and I want to really respect people's time. So this activity, I heard some great conversations going on. If the group leaders could just send me the list that you put together just as a Word document. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to see how they all fit together and come up with a 1.0 kind of like, here's your learning goals poster. Does this fit kind of the values that you think we want to make sure that we're embodying in the building? And then next time we meet, we're going to connect this to ideas about building design. And I have one more thing, which is as you go, is give you an opportunity. Again, this is going back to Mentimeter, and here's the code. And after you do this, feel free to jump off. This is just you can share your top learning goals that you discussed as you think about it, and where it's going to create kind of a word wall again. And I just put these up here initially to just kind of give you some starting points in case any of these were things that you were thinking about, but you'll have a sense of that. So if you just want to add, I think you can, sorry, one sec. I just did this quickly while people were, yeah, hold on. I'm trying to escape from here. I don't like having a typo there. I was figuring it would be a quick way to just kind of debrief. So here we go. Again, so thank you for being with us tonight. We really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to seeing you at the next workshop, where we are going to be talking about the design patterns that kind of connect to these ideas. And that will be where we really start kind of seeing what your priorities are as you think about the spaces in the building.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Sure. Thanks, everybody. We really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
All right. See you all. Oh, cool.
David, I sent you just a message, but can you send me the link to this recording for the project website?
Yeah, Tim, I'll send it to you tomorrow. It takes a little while to download.
Yeah, no, I know.
It's a big file, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the Google Doc folder, and I'll send you a link to that.
Perfect. Sounds great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Sure.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone. See you
Okay,
next
Molly.
time.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
I guess we're set.
All right.
I will